to welcome everyone to the December 13th, 2021 Board of Education meeting for the Phelps Clifton Springs Central School District. Couple notes before we get started. There are agendas at the front of the room, and if you're interested in signing up for public comment, please do so at the front of the room also. If you are watching online, the agenda is available on the website for you to find under Board of Education. And I also want to give a special thanks to everybody that works behind the scenes to put the board online. All this technical stuff that you do with the microphones and the cameras and the streaming, it's all very much appreciated. So, Crystal, could you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. We'll do roll call. Jake Amadon, board member.
Tracy Altman, board member.
Lindsay Marino, board member.
Ryan Davis, board member.
Matt Murphy, board member.
John Miller, board member.
Matt Sickles, superintendent.
Carl DeBosch, school business administrator.
Crystal Plant, district clerk.
You gotta turn your mic on, Amber. Thank you. So move to approve the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Thanks, Don. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda items. So any discussion on A through H of the consent agenda items? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now we move into the recognition portion of the meeting, starting with Jennifer Petracchi. Mr. Bay Rossi.
Well, thank you, everybody. We're here tonight to recognize the accomplishments of Jen Petracchi. During the middle of a pandemic, she auditioned virtually, submitting a recording of herself playing two pieces, and I believe something that they asked you to play, for the Rochester Youth Philharmonic, and subsequently was accepted to this very prestigious group as a clarinetist. Is it a clarinetist? Is that what it's considered? Okay. This opportunity allows her to practice and train with some of the best musicians and instructors in the greater Rochester area. They get together every Sunday for 3 hours of rehearsal to learn and perfect 4 to 5 pieces of music for each of their 3 concerts. So somewhere between 12 and 15 pieces of music that you'll play this year. She will be involved in 3 performances at Hochstein Performance Hall on November 14th, March 6th, and May 8th. In their next concert, they actually get to play with the RPO right alongside them, which has to be amazing. Jennifer plans to pursue music as a career as a music teacher in the future. When I asked her what has been her favorite thing about playing with the RPYO, she said, listening to all the great musicians. And I think that says a lot about her and her passion. Jennifer, the Board of Education, Superintendent Sickles, the Mid-Lakes community, and I would all like to congratulate you on this well-deserved achievement.
Awesome. Thank you. Second, Ms. Caitlin Wilkes, Mr. Lombardi.
Check with Todd.
I don't have any.
Good evening. We'd like to recognize Caitlin Wilkes for winning an individual sectional championship this year in cross country. The team sports usually get an escort back to the school with flashing lights, and it's a little harder to do that for individuals, and we always kind of feel bad about that. So we're trying to find other ways to recognize small groups and individuals to show them that Mid Lakes is proud of their hard work and it doesn't go unnoticed. Caitlin has put that hard work in, running endless miles and countless hours of training to reach her goals. She earned first team All-League honors, third team All-Stars for Section 5, finished 26th at state, and that Class C sectional title individually first place. And that also earned her a new car from her parents. We would like to congratulate Caitlin Wilkes from the Board of Education in Mid Lakes to let you know that we are extremely proud of you. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Awesome. Mr. Lombardi, Mr. Clausen, third item.
This is the night of good news, good
Yeah, no,
presentations.
this is
Good evening. It's my pleasure, our pleasure, to be here tonight for this next recognition. We often talk about Mid Lakes being Mid Lakes strong, one community, and on the night of October 1st, that was pretty evident as everybody who's not only parents but volunteers in our community came together to support an individual at our homecoming game. First responders from Phelps Fire, Phelps Ambulance, Thompson Health, Ontario County Sheriff's Office, Finger Lakes Ambulance, Mercy Flight, and several other unnamed volunteers and parents, people who just jumped the fence, wanting to help, do whatever they could when it was needed, came out to support one of our sports officials who worked that game. We welcome many of these first responders here tonight for this recognition to show our appreciation for their dedication in their volunteer efforts and professional efforts, and also just once again, coming together as one community, right? Mid Lakes is often, I see it often, and I'm the PR guy, so maybe I'm paid to say this a little bit, but I see this as where everybody comes together in Phelps and Clifton Springs. It makes us one. And everybody who helped Mike Connell, who's here today, get through that night and have a positive outcome, to be here with us tonight, 2 months later. So when I call your name out, some of them we're going to call organizations, and I know we have some representatives here and some individuals. Come on up, we'll have a token of our appreciation, and then just remain up here. We'll take some pictures. Everybody can talk, break down for a little bit, see each other, and then the board can commence, if that's all right with the board. Thumbs up. Okay, great. So first on the list, referee Mike Connell. Can you please come forward? We have Coach Tim Van Damme next. We have athletic trainer Alexandra Schreck. Coach / parent Jamie McCarrick. Yeah. Like I said, many of these people wear several hats in our community, and we're thankful to have all of them. Also, we have Sergeant Dana Egbertson of the Ontario County Sheriff's Office. A colleague of his, our beloved Bob Holland, Deputy Holland, was unable to be here tonight because he had some things to do with court. So, but let's give him applause as well, Deputy Holland. I haven't seen this individual, but Dr. Ishmael Mir. He is an assistant coach from the Hornell team who assisted in that night. Dr. Mir, are you here? No, I don't believe he's here. Let's give him a round of applause for providing assistance. We have Phelps Fire Department and Phelps Ambulance Service. Do we have anybody representing those organizations today? Yes. We have Finger Lakes Ambulance Service, and Scott Glick is with them, and he informed me today that he wasn't going to be able to get out of work until 7, so he might be stopping by later. So if you see me shaking someone's hand, let's give him an applause. Well, last but definitely not least is Mercy Flight Inc. Thank you so much for your help. And once again, thank you to all the volunteers, everybody who was just willing to help out someone who is in need. And that's what we're here for, to help other people. So thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank the school board for inviting me here tonight. Not too often you get a second chance in life. These people gave me a second chance in life. And it's, you know, the one constant theme when I was at Strong, all the doctors that I ran into and worked on me, they said that, you know, if I wasn't there, I wouldn't have made it. All the people there, they said they did a great job. You couldn't have been in a better place when this happened. Because they said, you know, it's like less than 1 out of 10 people would make it from what happened to me. And I just, you know, like to say thank you, and to these people, it was awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Oh, boy. Well, that was a lot of great stuff. Awesome to see our students and what they can accomplish, and how we come together as a team to avert tragedy. I mean, that's all right. Well, that's definitely the highlight of the meeting. All right, where am I here? Tenure recommendations, more good stuff. All right, Tammy Wood.
I'm going to do these a little out of order because my friend Nancy Wassman is here from the elementary school, and then we'll go to Donna Varelli. Right here, if you don't know, is Mrs. Wassman, and she is a teaching assistant in our elementary room in our 1211 special class, and she's been in that role for the last 4 years. She has remained a positive and most patient staff member. For those of you who do not know what her position is, she is a K-2 teaching assistant. And kindergartners often come in, let's just say, not toilet trained, in this particular special class. So the patience one person has to have, or the entire team has to have in this 1211 class is quite unique. But Mrs. Wassman can show great flexibility with needy and active 5 to 7-year-olds that many adults would not have the grit or endurance to show every minute of the day. And even though you can't see that smile underneath that mask, she is a smiler every day. She has a true love of children and works as a teammate with a special education teacher and aides in the classroom to get the best out of students. She has realized over her years as a teaching assistant and her prior years as an aide in the district that the teaching framework of I do, we do, you do, repeat, that's just my personal addition, that last part, of any skill is important for the neediest of learners. Mrs. Wassman has mastered the modeling of not only the academic skills, but also the social, transitional, behavioral, and life skills students need to learn. She is able to remodel with a smile on the fly for any student in need of a reminder. Furthermore, during the COVID-19 pandemic closure, She and the teaching team of aides and teachers could be found having driveway chats with students and making sure students were still practicing those needed academic and social skills. She simply beams with pride when she observes students in moments of independence because she knows what it took to get the student to that level. Additionally, she is willing to participate in professional development and to hone her skills in educating our neediest of students. So it is my esteemed pleasure to recommend Mrs. Wassman as a tenured teaching assistant in January. So Mrs. Donna Borelli could not be here tonight. She had worked our after-school program and had plans with her family. But she also was an aide in the district prior to becoming a teaching assistant. So it is, again, my esteemed pleasure to recommend Mrs. Donna Borelli to the Board of Education for tenure as a teaching assistant. She assumed the role in January of 2018, and in this role, she works in our 1511 special class in the middle school. She is a passionate advocate for her students, often going above and beyond, making personal connections with them that last for years. Mrs. Borelli is creative and has an excellent work relationship with her colleagues. She does not let a birthday go by without a little celebrating. She presents staff, along with some willing students, a poster board for that staff member to know they should be celebrated for gaining yet another year of experience. During the COVID-19 pandemic closure, she could be found having driveway chats with needy kids or delivering necessary items to students in need. She has earned the respect of many for the energy and work ethic she puts forth every day. She participates in professional development whenever she can. Mrs. Borelli utilizes peace circles, a restorative practice technique, daily with the students in the 1511 classroom. She sets professional goals for herself that are student-centered. She is eager for all students to build interpersonal confidence and have respectful behaviors. She provides multiple opportunities for students to be their best selves. And lastly, Mrs. Borelli continues to shine as an advisor and co-advisor to Mid Lakes Middle School Youth to Youth and the school store. She is certainly a collaborative and contributing member to the Mid Lakes family.
Awesome. Awesome, thank you, Tammy. So next item on the agenda is to act on the tenure recommendations. So item 7, tenure appointments. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the tenure appointments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tenure appointments are carried. Congratulations. Oh, boy. All right, page 2. All right, moving into presentations for the board. Proposed plan for refinancing serial bonds. Ben Maslona, you're up. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, everyone. As part of our ongoing service to the Board of Education, the Phelps Clifton Springs School District, one of the things we do is monitor outstanding debt to see if there's any refinancing opportunities. We also assist the district with a lot of state aid filings and in planning for the current capital project, future capital projects, things of that nature. So I always tell people you haven't seen me in a couple of years, but that's a good thing. If I was here all the time, that would mean finances were in a little bit of a distress, but we are in good shape here. And we'll continue the good news with bringing a refinancing opportunity to the board. We've been monitoring this for some time, and the first opportunity to refinance this bond is going to be March of 2022. This is actually a bond we issued once already. Well, we refinanced it once already. This would be the second time we refinanced it. Unfortunately, I can't take full credit for that. Market conditions just are what they are, as you know, maybe refinancing your home or a car loan, things of that nature. Rates are very strong right now. So we went through a process of determining which investment banker to use, brought those to the attention of Mr. Sickles and Mr. Dubash, and for the board's consideration tonight is a resolution to refinance. We anticipate refinancing would save over $1 million in budgetary savings over the next 9 fiscal years. That's about $120,000 per year. That is net of all costs of the financing. So after all of the refinancing costs are paid, that's the net to the district. One of the things also I'll mention is passing a resolution this evening does not obligate the district in any way. So should the market turn against us in the next few months and savings reduce to a level that's unacceptable, I would recommend that we stop the process. If that were to occur, there's no out-of-pocket expenses to the district, except for a legal advertisement. So assuming the board passes the resolution to refinance this evening, there will be a notice of estoppel published in the official paper of the district, and the cost of that publication, likely a couple $100, would be incurred by the district. But other than that, all of the other expenses are rolled into the refinancing so that there's nothing out of pocket. We are proud to bring this opportunity to the district. We think it will, not only assist with the 2022-23 budget planning, but also future capital project planning, which I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Dubash earlier this evening just to kind of review where we are and where we think we're headed. And with that, I'd like to entertain any questions that any of the board may have.
Any questions from the board on this? Remind the board, this is item B for our approval tonight under new business.
So just a quick question. So at this point, you're projecting the savings, I think you said March of '22, right? So you're projecting the rates based on where they are now?
Yep. Correct. And we would, to be honest with you, and this is going to get into the weeds a little bit, we would refinance the bond right now, but local finance law prohibits us from doing so. We have to be within 89 days of when the bonds are what's called callable, or when they can be paid off early. That date is June 15th. So back up 89 days, the earliest time is, I think, March 16th or 17th. So unfortunately, as soon as we can get it done, we want to get it done to maximize savings.
Great, thank you.
Good. All right, thank you. I think we're good.
Thank you, everyone.
Ben, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, second item in presentations, proposed policy changes. Carl Dubash.
piggybacking policy, they went out there to find out that the Greece Central School District had put out a bid that was accepted by Hazelton Automotive for a lease 12% below MSRP. Hence, our school district, as a result of having that piggybacking policy, could take advantage of those exact same terms of that contract and not go out to bid, not collect bids, go examine them for board approval, and spend months in the process, and also knowing with the shortage of supply chain issues and the shortage of transportation, it would have been months before a car actually arrived on campus. Instead, we were able to get a new lease established within less than 2 weeks. So once again, understanding some of the challenges that supply chains are facing lately and our school district for the variety of things we're trying to do, a piggybacking policy in this day and age certainly benefits the school district. So those are 2 key areas. Next slide, please, Mr. Siegels. The other policies, 5411, 5412, and 5413, I just put a very brief overview. 5411 essentially gives a 7-step breakdown of purchasing process that is aligned to general municipal law. It also has some language about a request for proposal, RFPs, that the district is obliged to do to make sure, once again, that they're not favoring a particular service or a particular company. 5412 talks about alternative forms of instructional material, some of the best practices a district should use to ensure that any kind of materials purchased, for example, textbooks, are delivered in a variety of media, such as a textbook. We can have a textbook on audio. We could also have a textbook in a different language to support our English language learners. And finally, 5413 talks about uniform grant guidance in accordance with federal law, the regulations and the rules going along with federal funds. One of the key things I want to mention along with that uniform grant guidance, one of the key findings through our external audit was for the district to embrace a federal grants manual, which is something I'm working on with Mrs. Robinette and Mrs. Wood currently. The uniform grants guidance only further strengthens that by having that as clear district policy. Over to the last slide, please. Finally, like I mentioned, I went to Erie 1 BOCES. What I'd like to point out, it's literally copied and pasted. Not an I is dotted or a T is crossed out a turn. All the language you will see as you read these 4 policies are directly from Erie 1 BOCES. They support about 375 school districts across the state, and they specialize in policy review. Something else I'd like to point out is our current purchasing policy was approved in 2012, and Erie 1's policy, I checked with them once again, it's ready to go for the year 2022. Finally, Erie 1, in addition to this policy, also provides us with regulations. Some of those thresholds that I look for as a business official that I can establish with the directors across the district, setting those thresholds and making sure that consistent business practices are enforced throughout any purchasing process. Those regulations are not something that the board requires approval for. Those regulations are something Mr. Sickles and I are going to work through and start a regulations binder as we move forward. And one last thing I did, just to look in our Wayne Finger Lakes area, I looked at some of our contiguous school districts that are neighbors to us, and something I noticed is that the majority of those school districts that had more recent purchasing policies had the piggybacking language within them. So at this point, I'd just like to take a second. I know I've shared with you a wealth of information across 4 different documents, and I just want to see if any of you folks have questions.
Remind the board and everyone that our policy on policies calls for usually 2 approvals from 2 subsequent board meetings. So on our agenda tonight is what we call the first read, where we initially accept it, and then our final approval will be at our next board meeting. So any questions for Carl on what he is proposing here?
as you look at some of this policy over the next couple meetings and do a second read, once again, I'd just like to point out that the policy is designed by Erie One BOCES. It's very boilerplate policy. If you were to look at another school district similar policy, a lot of the language is going to look identical, if not just about the same.
Cool.
Carl, with the piggybacking policy, if the board were to adopt this policy and we had piggybacking language, and we did in fact find another municipality that had issued a bid for that product or equipment or whatever it was, but we felt that we could do better by going out for our own bid,
For competitive
are we
bidding.
required to piggyback at that
We are
point?
certainly not required to piggyback, just like we're certainly not required to standardize. It just gives the district an option, and if it suits the needs of the district, that's a great question, Mr. Sickles, then we can take advantage of that. But if we feel we can do better by going out for a competitive bidding or going on state contract, then we certainly will go in that direction.
I think it's a move in the right direction. Some things aren't covered in this state contract, and it's easier to piggyback off another state or another entity to get an odd piece of equipment or something that another district has had a need for. I think it's a move in the right direction.
Great. All right, well, things come up. We'll have more opportunity to talk about it, but I think we're good for now, Carl.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank
Thank you,
you. All right, but don't go anywhere, because you're on again with Michelle Robinette on our American Rescue Plan State Reserve Funds Proposed Spending Plan.
All right, hello again. So over the next several minutes, Mrs. Robinette and I are going to present on the American Rescue Plan and Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief, the state reserves. The first thing I'd like to do is just give a nod to Mrs. Robinette for the tremendous amount of work she has done over the past couple weeks, if not the last month. These regulations came out, and the turnaround time was at first in early December, and I think they extended the deadline to December 17th. And it's taken a tireless amount of work on the part of Mrs. Robinette and a lot of communication, a lot of meetings with our district administrators and building administrators to try to come up with a plan that we can submit by this Friday, December 17th. So just a brief overview of the plan. Our ESSER state reserves, there was about $9 billion allocated to these state reserves, of which it's broken down into a 5%, 1%, and 1%. The dollar amounts that you're looking at are the 5% allocation for Phelps Clifton Springs, correspondingly the 1% and the 1%. So the funding is to be used between March of 2021 through September of 2024. 5% of the state's grant is to address the academic impact through subgrants, contracts, or activities to address the impact of loss of instructional time. But once again, that has to be evidence-based interventions. 1% of the state's grant for implementation of evidence-based summer school enrichment programs for $336,772. And finally, another 1% of the state grant for implementation of evidence-based comprehensive after-school programs. The reason I keep repeating evidence-based is because when this guidance came out in November, everything as part of a school district's proposal had to be evidence-based, which made it incredibly challenging to dive into this guidance, to go on Zoom meetings with officials from the state and understand what qualifies for evidence-based versus non-evidence-based. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle.
Okay. Well, thank you for the great introduction, Carl. And while overwhelmed by the amount of work that's gone into this, I'm very excited about the opportunity that it brings to our families and our students. And I just want to kind of share, first of all, in this short amount of time, we did put out a survey to stakeholders to try to get a little bit of input as to the different categories, and you'll see that in a moment. But here is the results of who participated in the survey that was shared out through emails and on our website and through a robocall, I believe. But we have students, parents, guardians, faculty, staff, district residents, business owners, and alumni all represented, and people could check more than one box. So there were some of us, like myself, who had several. The various categories within the grant, you'll see here listed, are in order of the response rates. So the top ones are intensive in-person or online tutoring is something that our stakeholders are interested in. Integrated social emotional support, curriculum-aligned enrichment, other evidence-based interventions, which we look to reading, math, social emotional learning, things that address those specific skills, and restorative practices, as well as community schools programming. Other options that were listed were individualized acceleration and trauma-informed practices. So taking a look at the three different pots of money that Mr. Dubois had shared, the first piece that we're taking a look at here is our comprehensive after-school programming. And some of these things will bleed over into the larger pot of money that's for loss of instructional time, because that can also be used towards after-school or summer programming. We just have to spend this minimum amount on the after-school program. So it's actually could be more than the $336,000. So one of the first pieces listed here is online tutoring for 7 through 12. And while that sounds like, oh my goodness, many people don't want to be doing things online. We've all had enough of Zoom and enough of online. Many of our neighboring districts have actually already begun using this company called Paper, and found the 7 through 12 students are really engaging with this opportunity. I recently did a webinar with them and Mrs. Shadler from a tech perspective. And the students can get on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and type in or even draw a question. It could be a math problem, a homework assignment that they're trying to work on, and get a tutor within seconds. And it could be 2 in the morning, which I know my daughter in high school sometimes is doing work at that time, even though I wish she wouldn't wait till, that procrastinating last minute. And they also have tutors who tutor in Spanish and Mandarin, so it would benefit all of our students who are learning English, that they might have trouble with their math homework, but if it was explained to them in their native language, they might actually get it. It might make more sense. And then I also asked the question about, well, if it's a Saturday night at 2 in the morning, what if a student has, says something that might just trigger that it doesn't seem right? Like, if you had concerns, they actually have tutors who are trained in youth mental health first aid that they will bring into the conversation. And then they will also have a district person as the contact to then contact after as a follow-up. So it seems like a very comprehensive offering, and students can also upload their essays and get annotated results back within 24 hours of recommendations for how to improve their essays. The second piece listed is reading and math tutoring for our K-6 population. We know that our K-6 students are showing gaps in their reading and math skills, and we feel like the relationships that they develop with our staff are a huge benefit in that learning process. So we would want to offer our staff the opportunity to engage in that reading and math tutoring after school with our students first. The other piece you see listed here is a community schools model. We already have certain aspects that are aligned with the community schools model. Things like our family counseling services that are free to families housed here in our buildings. We have our YMCA that's utilizing the building at times for daycare before and after school. We have had the PCC in the past. So this is an opportunity to partner with more of our community and bring in options and things for families. So it could be everything from building level services, more counseling, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech. In the evenings, could be more recreational programming. There's a curriculum from Cornell Cooperative Extension that we could be offering in the evenings that tries to fight childhood obesity at the elementary level, and it has an anti-Juul e-cigarette curriculum for the secondary level. So those are the types of things that we would hope having a community schools director or community schools MTSS coordinators could help us to figure out, to do a needs and assets assessment, to reach out to our community to find out who's out there, who's willing to help, how can they help, what do they have that we can try to embrace and bring to our families in a more comprehensive way. So we've also listed here some other ideas that could be vetted through those new positions, things like adult and parent training classes. So it could be everything from financial help, literacy type classes, job skills, technological skills, parenting skills. And then we also have listed the addition of more interpretation and translation services because while we have a growing population of English language learners, we struggle to get bilingual applicants for many of our positions, and we can always improve in our ability to reach those families. In terms of summer learning and enrichment, a huge portion of that funding would need to go towards staff salaries. We would also utilize it to improve our supplies and curricular materials to make sure they are evidence-based. And we can also improve our transition programs. We currently offer time for kindergarten families to come in, get to know the building, get to see what we have, and get their students used to the building. We also have a similar Eagle Camp that we've offered for 7th grade, and we could boost that as well to make it a more comprehensive program. And then the other great piece about the opportunity that this funding gives is the leaning towards more enrichment opportunities for all. Our kids have just been through so much, and while they are sometimes way more resilient than we are as adults, they really need the opportunities that enrichment can provide. They need horticulture classes or robotics or whatever it is that sparks their interest and gets them back into being a lifelong learner and wanting to explore their world. So those are just ideas listed there, but again, we would want to survey students, staff, find what people are willing to help provide and what students would actually really be engaged in coming to. And then we get to that larger pot of money called loss of instructional time, which can again help provide more things for before and after school and summer, or just in general for learning loss. One of the things that was listed as evidence-based that we know can help many of our families, especially right now with all that we've been through, is dual enrollment program fees. So if you have students who take AP courses or they take the Gemini classes that give you college credit through FLCC, there's usually a fee. And while the fees have been subsidized by other entities and come down in price, we don't want that to be a barrier for anyone taking any of those classes. And so by offering to cover the costs, we may see more and more students take advantage of those courses. The other piece listed here are just more about evidence-based programs and professional development. So these are just some of the examples. We know that our staff are feeling overloaded and fatigued by a lot of new initiatives, and we had already started the process as a district of adopting a new ELA curriculum that was evidence-based, and we want to continue that work. We also had adopted a social-emotional curriculum, and we want to continue that work. So this funding can help us to continue to provide PD in some of those areas, buy updated materials or additional materials, so that we're not just adding more things just to spend the money. One last piece listed there is a potential new math core curriculum. So now that we've been implementing new ELA curriculum for a couple of years, we wanted to at least put that in there as an option. This is an opportunity while that money is there that we could put together a committee of stakeholders to take a look at our current math curriculum, evaluate it, and whether we would want to just update it to the most recent version that's coming out from that company, or if we would want to make a switch to a different math curricula over the next 3 years with the funding. It wouldn't have to be right away, but the money would be set aside there to make that purchase in this time frame. I'm going to turn things back over to Mr. Dubois at this point to finish up that larger pot of money.
In addition to some of the things Mrs. Robinette added, there were some positions that we were able to use the CRISA ESSER 2 funds for until about, I believe it's sunset in 2023. If you look at the positions under staffing, the bulk of those positions, we were able to secure the funding for those positions through the CRISA ESSER 2 funds till 2023. What we've gone ahead and done is proposed through our proposal that we'll be submitting on Friday that we're going to add 1 more year to the bulk of those positions. In addition, there's also an AIS position that we've created this year, and we're going to actually factor the cost for the next 3 years, this year and 2 more years, into this proposal that we're submitting on Friday as well. So that essentially is in a nutshell what we're doing with staffing and staffing costs. Just to piggyback on something Mrs. Robinette added, to further some of the professional development happening across the district, what we're proposing is to continue in the area of multi-tiered systems of support, our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions for a variety of students across all grade levels. In addition, further professional development in the area of PBIS, or positive behavior intervention supports, and restorative practices. The last piece is the Resilience and Equity Conference that's occurring in Syracuse, I believe this late spring, early summer. We plan on also sending teachers, provided this plan's approved. We plan on sending a variety of teachers to that conference in Syracuse as well. And finally, to our next steps over the course of this week, one of the challenges, especially over the last 2 weeks, has been frantically reaching out to various vendors and software companies, trying to get quotes and trying to come up with a concise dollar amount so we can submit a complete proposal by this Friday. We've still been waiting on a few vendors, hence what you haven't seen today is an itemized breakdown of prices, because we are waiting on a few vendors to give us some finalized quotes that we can take and put into the application. The final approval for this ARP ESSER State Reserve has to happen by March 23rd, and occasionally what we're hearing is sometimes school districts have to go through more than 1 round of applying before final approval, but that's yet to be, we'll wait and see how that goes. And finally, pending approval, or once our application has been approved, our next steps, especially for something as big as like a math curriculum, we want to get some staff input at that point into the kind of curriculum we should embrace for the future. We don't want to make any knee-jerk reactions or make a decision without gathering staff input. So we value that staff input, and that's something we'd look forward to in terms of curriculum, professional development offerings, and even staff availability for summer and after-school offerings. One last piece, I think the state has mandated this. For any approved applications, they have to be posted to the district webpage. So in this finite amount of time, we're going to work with certain vendors, and provided this has been approved, this is going to be posted to the district webpage. But the school districts also have the flexibility, once the application is approved, to go with a different vendor. So even though someone may see a particular vendor on the approved application, we still have the flexibility to gain staff input and go with a different vendor once after approval. At this point, we'd like to take a few minutes and open it up to the board for some questions.
Well, it's an incredible amount of work. Thank you both for overseeing this. Any questions from the board?
I think the online tutoring is a great option. I wish it was when I was a student, or even when our son was a student. You know, math is always evolving. If you don't come up with the answer that night, he's just behind the next day.
Yeah.
It gives them another option. So I think that's a great, just that one point on there that I saw, I think it's a great point.
After approval, when will the kids be able to start using these services?
Would you mind repeating that?
Like with the online math tutoring? Like after it's approved, how soon would the kids be able to use services like that?
I think that's just a little bit, that would take a little work on our part of reaching out to the company and making sure that we can actually get the process moving, and then pending board approval, I could see it being somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 45 days at the minimum to get that rolling. I also, because it's an online subscription, I think there's going to be some back-end work once we get it approved for them to kind of integrate with our systems and make sure our students have accounts. So it could take up to 60 days once we're approved to actually give to make sure every student has a username or password to be able to access that system, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate, but I will just say that this company so far has been really great to work with in that they've been doing their homework and the backstory type work to get it ready in case we get approved. So that's why I had Mrs. Shadler join me on the webinar. And so she had already shared with them some of the tech background aspects of how we integrate with Clever and School Tool, so they could already start to get that plan in place on their end for when we say, go. They'll jump and they'll be like, sure, pay us now, so we will go. And we'll make it as quick as we possibly can.
I think the biggest question, and school districts across the state are already starting to report on this, is the lag in getting the state approval of the application. I think the company piece, working with them, is they're going to be much more responsive and quick to get the products in our hands than the actual process of getting the approval. Michelle was being kind in talking about the webinars that the state provided to support this process, because I think you could describe their answers as neither clear nor definitive as to what is evidence-based. So this is going to be interesting back and forth. We expect that like with many applications that have to be submitted to the state portal, that it'll probably be kicked back a couple times for more comments and more details related to specific pieces. And we don't know if they'll approve it in parts or as a whole. It's likely that they'll wait to approve it as a whole. So if there's one piece that we're going back and forth on and for more detail, that could hold up the entire application. And what makes it difficult is there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, is they want all the detail on pricing and delivery of a system or a service and how it's evidence-based, but some of that requires negotiation, contracts, that you need to know that you're going to have approval before you negotiate that contract and get the price. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple months. You know, they have a lot of work ahead of them. They've done a ton of work already, but to get this ready in the next handful of days to submit by Friday, and then wait and see what that feedback is, and then be reactive to that, we're more concerned about how long it'll take to get the state approval. The companies, we think, will be responsive once that happens.
So on paper, I mean, this money was over 3 years, but really it's now 2 years you have to spend that money, right? Because it says between.
Yeah, it's got to be encumbered by, I believe, by September of 2024.
Yeah, so some of the companies, like the online tutoring company, they gave us a quote for 2.5 years, knowing that half the year's pretty much over or will be by the time we're approved. And that way it would line up more with our school year, our fiscal year, so that when we do want to renew, if things go well at the end of that time period, we would be on our regular schedule to renew for like a July 1st time. And they did say they are on the BOCES contract, so at that point we could purchase through BOCES and get aid back.
So, to your point on the reduction in time, is when they first rolled this out, this money could be used over 3 years. But this portion, the state reserve portion of the money, the state had to submit an application to the federal government first. So they went through the process that we're going through now. They had to wait for the federal government to approve their process. Then they had to write the regulations that they then put out to us with very short notice. So that has eaten into a pretty good chunk of the first year and will cut down on the amount of time that we have to allocate this money. But I do want to applaud Michelle and Carl and the whole team for looking at opportunities to spend this money now in ways that will then become aidable in different ways if we seek to sustain it afterwards. Because it's great that these opportunities will be available, but then if we pull the rug out from, if our students like them, are responsive to them, and they're having results, and then the funding goes away and you have to rip the rug out from under them, it'll be better if there's a sustainable funding model, and they've been looking for opportunities that meet that criteria.
Awesome. Anybody else or notes? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
for
guys.
the presentation. Thank you for your
Thank
work
you.
and everybody's work. It's a lot of fun stuff here, for sure. Okay. That moves us out of presentations and into our reports. Our first report is Fort County School Board Association. I missed the last meeting because I was busy Tuesday nights, but those are over. My Tuesday night requirement is over, so I'll be able to attend meetings in the future. But I looked over the minutes, and I did not see anything I needed to report to the board. Anybody else have anything from Fort County?
The last I saw on their legislative committee stuff, Jake, was the highlights are going to be much the same as what they were last year. It's going to be, surprisingly enough, they're going to lobby for equity and predictability in funding. Again, they're going to start to ask for expansion and online services. The last email thread that I read said that they were going to be working with the superintendent's legislative group to try to make sure that we're duplicating efforts when necessary and not kind of stepping on each other's toes. So I think that's something that they haven't done in the past. I think it's a good idea. So when because we'll have meetings and you'll have meetings, but never before did the two groups have a meeting in the mind, so we know what to push.
That started for the first time when Marla Iverson took over as executive director, and then that got sort of disrupted by COVID.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear that they plan to continue that collaboration.
Yep.
Cool. Cool. Thank you, Ryan. Policy Committee. Tracy?
Yeah, so one of the things we looked at was and listened to was Carl explaining the updated policies that are needed at this point that were presented earlier. The other thing that we looked at was our policy to have an ex officio member, student member to our board. And when we looked at our policy and discussed some options, at this point, we're recommending that we keep the policy that we have, just because it's policy doesn't mean that's exactly what we have to do. But what we want to do, certainly it's aligned with one of our board goals, our goal number 1. And the option that we talked about that we felt best met our goal to explore and create opportunities for student engagement with the Board of Education was to invite our student government group to create a presentation. It would be like a standing agenda item. So we would invite them to either, however they wanted to do it, whether they wanted to rotate a couple members of the student government would come each board meeting and give a presentation just to kind of highlight the positive things that are happening, the things that students are doing and engaged in, as well as, you know, if there's any concerns that students have that they would like to bring to the board. So that was kind of where we landed, was getting our student government involved and letting them kind of determine how they best want to, whether they want to have one representative that always comes and presents, or if they, like I said, if they want to rotate through and share the responsibilities. But just to make that a standing agenda item, to have a presentation from our student group. So.
Cool. So hold that, if you got discussion on that, because that was under our board discussion here coming up in a minute, but, so that's the report. And superintendent's report, Mr. Sickles.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to address the issue of school safety. So, our families and staff know that on the afternoon of Tuesday, December 7th, I sent a message regarding school safety following some unrelated incidents of threatening comments made by students that were investigated and deemed to be unfounded. The school, you know, based upon investigation, the school, including students and staff, were never in jeopardy. It was determined that there was no actual imminent threat. However, given the fact that rumors were starting to swirl, we felt that it was important to get out and acknowledge that comments had been made. They were investigated. The school resource officer was immediately involved, as we always do whenever there's anything of a potentially unsafe nature. It is important, and we took the opportunity in that message to remind everybody that the district does not tolerate threatening comments or behavior of any kind, whether it's towards the school or any individuals, and that violators are held accountable according to the code of conduct. The district, and I know this is frustrating for parents, the district is not able to comment on the details of any matters related to student discipline, but does want the community to know that we take every such incident seriously. We investigate them thoroughly, and we work with all the appropriate agencies and resources to take the appropriate course of action. In terms of COVID updates, just want to update on testing. So per the New York State Department of Health, which put out very clear guidance to this effect, the test to stay protocol has been adjusted. So this is the protocol that allows students and staff who've been exposed, known to have been exposed, but are asymptomatic, to remain in school by testing daily for 7 days and testing negative for 7 consecutive days. Originally, as outlined by Ontario County Department of Health, that was also going to apply to extracurricular and athletic activities. Based upon some events that happened in other parts of the state or around the state, DOH came out and very clearly said that the test to stay protocol will not apply to anything outside of the school day. So it does not apply to sports, it does not apply to extracurriculars, anything outside the school day, weekends, school vacations. It's only intended to keep students in school during the school day. So that's an important change. It's been updated on the website, and we have had to clarify that for some parents. In terms of where we stand on COVID cases and quarantines, cases, it's no secret, are on the rise in our region, throughout Ontario County and the entire Finger Lakes region. Through Friday, December 10th, we had 51 active cases and 128 active quarantines. Since the start of the school year, so since we first had to start reporting in the state portal on September 13th, we've had 111 positive cases. So if you think of those 111, 51 of them have been in the last 14 to 16 days. It really is indicative of that recent increase, which is associated with being indoors more often, as well as the holiday season and different gatherings. Most cases have been confirmed to have originated outside of school, but we have had some evidence of school-based spread. Of those 111, about, maybe about 15 of those, as some cases that started as quarantines then ultimately resulted in a positive test. So of the 51 positive cases through Friday, December 10th, 33 were elementary, 16 were middle, high school. Those are all students, and 2 were staff members. Of the 128 quarantines, 101 were elementary because they are more aggressive in quarantining at the elementary level. 26 are middle high school students, and 1 was a staff member. Today, we were notified of additional positive cases and quarantines identified over the weekend. So, that number of 51 active cases is a rolling number. You've got some that will come off and others that will come on, but we expect that number to stay up throughout this holiday season. The Department of Health continues to remind us weekly in our weekly superintendent's meetings that mask wearing and full vaccination status continue to be the 2 primary factors that they weight most heavily in determining whether somebody's quarantined. Again, it is the county Department of Health that orders isolation or quarantine, not the school. We do assist in the communication, but we do not make those decisions. So when I speak of those factors, mask wearing and vaccination, those just happen to be the factors that the Department of Health has identified to us that they use as their primary criteria. So certainly we encourage and remind all families and staff of our protocols, the importance of mask wearing in school, since that is going to very often determine quarantine or not. But what often, this far into all of this, we forget about good hand washing, respiratory hygiene, hand sanitizer, and we encourage, and staying home, most importantly. If you suspect an exposure or there's any symptoms, we encourage parents to keep their children home. Those are the best things we can do to minimize the spread and to keep kids learning in person. We know it might take a short-term sacrifice, but if it can prevent the spread of COVID-19, it'll keep more kids in school for in-person instruction. Do want to provide a quick facilities planning update because we have quite a bit going on the facilities end of things, and sometimes it's easy to forget how many different things are happening. So right now, our Smart Schools Bond Act project, which is technology and security infrastructure upgrades, that work is underway in the elementary school and will carry on throughout the winter before then moving over to the middle high school. So that's happening during second shift in the evenings and has been going very well with very little disruption. The $15.6 million capital improvement project that was approved by voters in December of 2019, that has been broken into 2 phases. Phase 1 has gone out to bids. The bids have been opened, and tonight you will award those bids to the companies that won them. So that work is going to start in early spring. Phase 2 bids will be posted for companies in February. So again, we expect some work to begin, like for example, the new parking lot behind the elementary school, the fuel station, the site work for that type of work, the outside work could start late winter, early spring, depending upon how the weather cooperates. And then work on phase 2, much of which is in this building, could start in the late spring. We are currently working with our architects and construction managers to finalize the sequence of the work and to identify the specific areas that will be impacted and how operations and programs will be affected. And as soon as that is known in detail, it'll be communicated out to all stakeholders. So be looking for updates and we'll be sending out information. The bus lift replacement project, which was included in the budget for 21-22, The New York State Office of Facilities Planning has approved that project, and pending board action tonight to authorize the transfer of the funds, the bus lift will be ordered tomorrow. We want to get that ordered as soon as possible to avoid a price increase as we continue to see supply chain issues and prices going up, so we want to move on that as quickly as possible. We also have an HVAC controls project that we're proposing through the use of our federal funds, another part of the federal fund money. So the board will act tonight on the State Environmental Quality Review, or it's called the SEEKR, and also the authorization to allocate a portion of our American Rescue Plan federal funds for the upgrade of those HVAC controls. So pending board action, we'll then move forward with the final submission of our federal funds spending application for that pot of money, and then submission of the project to the State Ed Office of Facilities Planning. So that one's a little complicated because it's a two-part process. We got to approve the funding source and then get the approval as an actual small capital project. And then on top of that, many people will recall when we started in the planning of the capital improvement project, we really, and Ben spoke to this, because of our good standing with our debt, we have the opportunity to do multiple capital projects over, a total of about a 10 to 12 year period. So while we are waiting and getting ready for work to start this spring, we'll start talking about what the next capital project could be, and we could be going out for a vote in late 2023, right as this next project is buttoning up. So the work of maintaining our facilities, improving our campus, upgrading our programs and opportunities for our students is cyclical, and we're fortunate to be in good financial standing and our debt's in good shape. That hopefully we can continue to upgrade our facilities with no additional tax impact. So lots going on with facilities.
Yes.
And that is my report.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt from the board on those items?
Just one, Jake. Matt, should we think about maybe next month or so doing a facilities meeting so we can start to discuss? I want to go over what this project was versus what the wish list was.
Right. So we met with our architects and our construction managers, was it just last week? And what they're doing is reviewing our most recent building condition survey, sort of updating it in terms of what work is being accomplished in this first project, and putting, kind of sort of narrowing the lane, so to speak, on what the scope of a second project could be, but kind of creating buckets for us to look at. So they expect to have that done during the month of January. So I anticipated that the facilities committee will meet sometime in January after we've had a chance to sort of look at what they've come back with. And then the facilities committee will kick those ideas around, narrow the scope a little bit more, and then also talk about, similar to the last project, how we can engage stakeholder groups for feedback. So a similar process, yes.
I just had a quick question on the test to stay. Could you just explain that a little more? So if I choose to test and stay, I just get to stay for school, I need to go home?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting process because every county has handled it differently. So schools in our BOCES that are in different counties have had different experiences. And the state has its own feelings on test to stay. But Ontario County has embraced it from the beginning as an opportunity to keep kids in school. So we're fortunate in that regard. Originally, it was intended, it was going to be, again, if you were exposed but asymptomatic, as long as you continued to be asymptomatic, you could test daily at school for 7 consecutive days, and as long as you continued to test negative for those 7 days, then you could attend school and participate in extracurricular and athletic activities Monday through Friday only. So it never included weekends. Only within the last, I'd say, 10 days, and I would say that it was precipitated by an athletic situation not related to Mid Lakes. The state has come down very firmly, very definitively in identifying that test to stay cannot be applied to athletics or extracurriculars, that if a county is going to use it, which Ontario County is, that it applies only to the school day. And it was disappointing that an event that had nothing to do with us or our county altered that opportunity.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Matt on all that?
So Matt, I just wanted to mention, I didn't know, I know we had that school safety episode last week. And I don't know if it was completely resolved or if there are more stories flying. So I'm hearing stories from my children, I'm seeing stories on social media about some potential threat of a school shooting tomorrow. So I know we have to respect the privacy of students involved in the incident, but I also feel like as a parent, like I can't just dismiss hearing something like that, right? When you have some, children texting your kids saying, hey, we're not going to school tomorrow because this is supposed to happen, right? So I don't know that you guys are aware of any of that. It's kind of circulating this evening. But I think we need to talk about it as a team and as a community to kind of figure out if there's any truth to that or, I don't know.
So I can say that the two specific situations that precipitated my message have been resolved. I can't responsibly respond to your specific situation because I would be speaking off the cuff and might be creating more of a panic. So I have members of my team looking into what you're
Yeah, and I don't even
referring
know
to.
the details of it, right? Because I didn't particularly see a lot of the stuff, but I hear it, right? And, it makes you think as a mom, if I'm sending my kids to school tomorrow, and I hear something like that, and I just wanted to be sure that the right people are doing their homework and looking into it, for tomorrow.
Okay. Again, I can't speak publicly to that, but we take every potential threat to the school very seriously.
Did you guys hear anything like that from your kids tonight? No.
Okay.
I was home long enough to take a shower and turn on the
Hey, we will get the public comment in a second. Thank you.
There is a specific process that we follow that's appropriate for investigating these things. We will follow that process. I'm not able to speak about it publicly.